Hello and welcome to Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is February 17th, 2024, and we are staring at charts. This is a weekend update. It's going to be a fairly quick one. We want to take a look at some of the timeframes that we had talked about in the previous staring at charts video and on yesterday's live stream. That being primarily the 2-day, 3-day, 4-day closes that just came in with today's daily close open. We're now in the Sunday candle. It is still Saturday over here on the west coast of the US for me, but we got those major time frame closes and it has confirmed a few things that we were looking for. Let's go ahead and start with the daily though. We can see that Bitcoin did play down a little bit in yesterday's price action. It has not yet closed below the wick low from the 15th. That is coming in at 51,353. Yesterday's close got close, but it came in at 51,666. So the devil's number there. We did see that the wick low from yesterday has now come into where the updated upper first standard deviation is coming in around 50,500 or so. So if Bitcoin does lose yesterday's wick low, it will confirm this area as being a swing high. Technically, we already have a swing high to a swing low in, but if we do see this area dropped, we would start to look for this close open on the close here of the order block candle from the 13th as the next big area to watch. That's coming in at 49,725, and we'll discuss why that's an important area shortly here. But essentially, if that area is reclaimed, we then have to pay attention to the wick high. This was the deviation wick high of this tighter range over here before putting in the spike down to the monthly at 38.5. If the upper first is lost, that being again at around 50,500, pay attention to the wick high coming in around $49,000 to the close open. And you can see why this is important. That's coming in right at a monthly level at $47,000. That's also the daily basis band. So that is kind of the downside look that we have to pay attention to in today's candle. Now, of course, we will also, I believe, see CME opening today, which is Sunday's candle. So that's going to be opening later in the day, just prior to close of the daily candle. So something else to look out for there. If the basis was to be lost at any point, we then look to the horizontal levels, that being around $46,000 to $45,000, kind of bracketing that 45.5 monthly to that lower first standard deviation, which is now coming in the top side of this consolidation around the close highs here at 43.3. It is slightly lower than that area. It's about $43,000. Bitcoin is safe to even come all the way back down here. It would not be a good thing for the bulls to give up that much ground, but as long as it's not taking out the wick low into the weekly at 41,850 or so, it would be seen as a bullish retest of the breakout of the current structure. So this current uptrending structure, not ideal. Definitely would be looking for possible lower highs and then consolidation and compression of the bands here. But as it stands right now, Bitcoin still has the opportunity to go test its local highs, that being around that 52,900 area to $53,000. We'll take a look at the support and resistance chart again so I can remind you of where that 2021 weekly wick high was prior to the rundown back to retest off of the Wyckoff accumulation or reaccumulation in 2021. But as long as Bitcoin's trading and closing candles above the upper first, which does mean that it can wick below, but as long as it's closing above the upper first, the highs of the range here around the close open at 52,160 to just under 53, and even the upper second standard deviation are still available. Now we do see that BBWP is cooling down. It is below the moving average currently, and even though we do see that mean reversion is likely in play because of the aggressiveness of this move up, we're going to see, any kind of price action that kind of hangs out sideways will allow the basis band to catch up, and then we'll see compression of the bands. Another positive sign that this is pretty darn bullish right now is that the upper second standard deviation has gotten a positive slope. Now, We do want to see that above this prior wick low around 41,850 by that weekly. But again, as long as Bitcoin is in the strong half of the bands here, even down to that basis, it's looking very, very strong. Sideways and up is more than likely the name of the game. Now, $54,000 up to around $55,000 is the next target for me personally, at least initially, if Bitcoin does take out the local highs somewhere around 53, looking kind of to the mid $50,000 area, and then come back to it later if it can recapture that area in the daily time frame, and then we can start looking to the deeper 50s. I would expect, a pullback in a higher low structure, whether it's on the swing that we just saw down to this swing low. But I'm more interested in looking for a high on a close that then pulls it back into a higher low on a close open basis, which Bitcoin has not yet initiated just yet. We might see that this week, not quite sure. Let's go ahead and jump over to support and resistance just so we can remind ourselves of where the levels are. Again, if Bitcoin does drop this weekly here at 50,800, this is of lesser importance than the weekly just above it at 51.8 because this was an actual close open swing high. That was the weekly swing high. Again, that's coming in from back here. This was the weekly swing high on a close. Well, it's a close open high to a swing high there at 53K, but the close open's coming in at 50,000 or 51.8. Whereas the less important close open, although it's still important, is that 50,800 area. And then, of course, when looking at the daily, we can see that, the upper first for the daily time frame is going to be something to watch coming into the weekly close as well. And that is sitting just below there, right around the current wick lows there at 50,500 or so. Below there, we start looking at this wick high over here from the deviation of the prior tighter consolidation over here, coming in at around 49,000 to the March 2022 monthly swing high. This was the bear market swing high coming in at 48,230 to 40. And then, of course, below there, we're looking right into this monthly zone at $47,000 and that basis just below it at 46,750. Below there, we're looking to the next monthly at 45.5, right around the wick highs here into the $45,000 close open over here. Below there, you can see how this is kind of lining up. We have the weekly lining up with that lower first, right around 43.2 to 3 or so. I would give it some room. Of course, if Bitcoin can trade back above its current highs and that September 2021 weekly swing high that I just pointed out prior to the all-time high, then that upper second is in play into the mid $50,000 region. Let's go ahead and take a look at those medium-term timeframes that just got the close opens. That would be the 2-day. So the 2-day upper first standard deviation, very nice. We see that this is playing right around the wick highs of the deviation of the prior range. That's now coming in at 425. So it's even above the bear market monthly swing high there. The basis is now coming in above the tighter consolidation highs here, at least on a close, coming in at 44,500. And the lower first is still getting its downside expansion because the Bollinger Bands are still in an expansive phase. We see that BBWP is an 86 over 83. That's actually good. That's more bullish than bearish. But if the daily starts to mean revert hard, we could see Bitcoin, especially if it runs below that basis, start to get in and around that lower first if it starts to break down from this sideways consolidation, and in particular that wick low at 41.8. That is the, that's the equivalent of losing this weekly and lower first on the daily at 43.2, and then losing the weekly right here at 41.850, 41.8 area. Then, quite frankly, we have to look for the tighter consolidation lows and possibly even back down to retest this deviation low into the weekly monthly zone by the daily lower second even at 39K to 38,500, which, to be fair, was tagged directly. And we've seen that a few times on these moves. In particular, we saw this on the support resistance flip over here at the $35,000 monthly. with this 34,750 coming into the monthly weekly area. Weekly is at 34,750 to the monthly there at $35,000. That's this area right here. This area was tested 3 times, moved through it, came back, perfect retest. And then of course, we saw this monthly zone moved through here, and it would not be out of the ordinary to see a test on the high side or the low side of those monthly closes. So no big deal there. We do still have confirmed Stoke to the upside here. We see that it's now pivoted at 49,875, so basically 49.9. Getting below the local range lows, and we would be looking for this to go and test somewhere around either the monthly swing high at bear market swing high at 48,230 to the monthlies there at 47 at minimum. When looking at the 3-day, we saw that this closed above the upper second standard deviation yet again. That is now right where price is, basically at 51,500. So if that's lost, we can see the upper first is now right in and around the highs of this deviation. Not quite as much of a deviation on the 3-day, but that is coming in at just under $48,000. You can just call it 48 even just to be safe. And you can see that the basis is above the prior consolidation prior to this move up and taking out this high over here. And that's coming in at 44,385, so basically 44.4. And the lower first is still kind of sideways. We see the lower second expanding down as this is really just kind of starting its expansion. If we were to see this lose the upper second and then subsequently the upper first, this would go back into contraction. But we could see BBWP volatility, or the volatility of price within the bands here, is still very high at an 80 over 54. So this is basically telling us that this move is not yet over from the 3-day time frame to the upside here. We can see that reflected in charted format over here with this vertical liftoff of BBWP, moving average chasing. And of course, we were looking for this to follow through with the 4-day. We see BBWP is still up there at 56 over 31, so about a 20% difference there. We see Stoke is pivoted at 44,250 or so. And we can see that Bitcoin is trading above the upper second standard deviation, actually giving it a little bit more slush here down to the prior daily low area. It's not exact, but it's coming in around 50,800, which is the weekly, the one that I think is a little less important than the 51.8. Now below there, the upper first is now above the prior close open high on the 4-day. And that is coming in right there at the monthly at 47,000. If price did happen to get below there and close below there, the basis is coming in above the consolidation again here, right around that same area at 44.3 to 4. So very nice there. Confirmed expansion, we just talked about that. Confirmed expansion of the bands themselves and price volatility within them and outside of the upper second standard deviation. So this does paint the picture that things are going to get continuation to the upside eventually, even if we do see a little bit of downside price action on the daily, as long as Bitcoin is playing in the strong half of the band. So between the upper first and basis at minimum. So downside risk there is that I would kind of split the difference around 44,500 or so. If we start seeing closes below there, likely to see this recompress, and we're probably looking at things playing back into the range down here, maybe even testing those lows like I was saying earlier. Now, the next thing to look for, of course, is going to be that 5-day and weekly, but we have the weekly coming up before the 5 days, so we're going to start with this. If Bitcoin can close above the upper second standard deviation, which it is trading around right now, and that's coming in at 51,650. If it can trade and close the weekly above there, we will see a bit more aggressive expansion of the Bollinger Bands. We do have BBWP up over the moving average, but it's kind of just getting rolling. And we didn't get a really tight compression on the bands either. So what I would be looking for with the weekly, or in respect to the weekly, would be for Bitcoin to walk the upper second standard deviation to the upside with possible deviations to the downside below that upper first, but maintain the basis. Of course, the basis on the weekly is now above the prior wick low into the monthly at 38.5. The basis is now coming in at 39.4 to 5. It's going to depend on your exchange, but here on Bitcoin spot price action for Coinbase, it's coming in around 39.440. I would call it 39.5, around those daily lows on a close. The upper first is coming in at 45.5, so right at that monthly level and right at this wick high that was kind of holding things down for a little while there. And that upper second and upper first are going to remain upside and downside targets on the daily in the context of a weekly until they're broken on the weekly. So, even if we did see price dip below the upper first or get above the upper second, I would still exercise caution from the daily time frame until we see the weekly come in. And in this case, if it can close above the upper second, we're likely to see BBWP volatility tick up and get a nice move in those Bollinger Bands, where the Bollinger Bands are probably going to be right around price action, at least the upper bands here at the upper second. The other nice thing to note here on the weekly is in the event of a big crash and flush out and chaos in the markets that take out this low at the monthly at 38.5, well, we can see the lower first is a likely candidate below the basis band here, and that's coming in at the $33,000 level. I wouldn't be looking for things to initially get there right away, and I would actually be looking for price to probably aggressively spike into this big area prior to testing an area like that. There's also monthly supports down there in the $35,000 range, so wouldn't be my first take on price if we did see a crash scenario. But you should always keep that in mind and have planned potential targets in terms of volatility as it relates to support and resistance to the downside here. Now, the next thing that I will tell you to pay attention to is the Stoke on the weekly. If we do see a weekly close for today's daily candle and weekly candle come in above 48,500, which again is above that monthly at 48,230, which is the bear market swing high, then we would see Stoke cross back to the upside. The other piece of the puzzle here would be Bitcoin maintaining its BBWP above the moving average. So that's that 16 over 11 and a half. And then the moving average get a positive slope. I'm not of the opinion that we're going to see the positive slope on the moving average in today's closure or at the close of today, close open of the weekly. I would actually be looking for this to possibly occur next weekend. So this will be something to monitor and watch throughout the coming week. But just keep in mind, we've already got confirmation on the 5-day. We've already got confirmation on the 4-day. We've already got confirmation on the 3-day. We've got confirmation on the 2-day, although we do see it cooling down a little bit in terms of BBWP. Moving average is still up, though. And even the daily, even though it is starting to curl around, we can see price spike back through it, possibly even turning the moving average back up. Now, the only way that this would occur is if Bitcoin plays back above or back towards the upper second and especially above. Now, that would be going into somewhere around the mid $50,000 region, 54 to 55K. So that's something that I would keep an eye on. It is still possible, especially as it relates to the medium-term timeframes between the daily and weekly that I was just pointing out. So price looks good. Pullbacks are welcome and healthy, and I'd be looking at that, not financial advice, but initially from a technical analysis point of view, I'd be looking at that as healthy and as a potential opportunity. So get your levels down pat and make sure that you have a plan for your trades, whether it's to the upside or downside. Remember, what we're doing here is we're defining criteria for potential trades to the upside and potential trades to the downside. If you're not already in an upside trade, you might be able to define the criteria for a downside trade, and you might be able to define criteria for continuation to the upside and maybe scalping a trade in between timeframes. So we're not just looking to I'm not looking just purely to tell you whether price is going to go up or down, because price can do whatever it wants to do. We're here to pick out zones of interest and define them clearly, and then you can go on your own and define your risk profile and trade based on that. All right. I will be back here on Monday for a live stream. I will not be streaming or doing a recording for that weekly close. I think I got most of the information out there that I wanted to get out there regarding my thoughts on the coming weekly close here for the Sunday candle. And I hope that you enjoyed that. If you did find it helpful, please go ahead and like, subscribe, share with others that you think may also find this helpful. And I will talk to you in the next one. You have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that being said, Landy out.